Transit 2 has a whole series of different motion sources that you can use to control parameters in a configurable multi-effects chain. Some of these you will recognize from Transit 1, 4 are new to Transit 2, and we're going to have a quick look at each one and how to use them to animate different features of the multi-effects. So the macro knob is probably the most recognizable motion source from Transit 1, and it's really good for creating big risers and fallers and animating things like a drum bus or even your whole mix. So in this case, I'm going to use the macro knob to control a high pass filter, which I've selected over here, and it's going to control the mix level, some resonance, and the filter cutoff. And we're going to have it sweep from low to high, taking this drum loop all the way out of the mix, so that as I raise it up, it eventually kills all the sound. Let's also have it bring some delay in, good amount of feedback. Macro knob is going to control the wet dry on the delay so it doesn't show up right away, but as I raise the knob up, it does show up, and we'll also have it control the wet dry on some reverb, but we're going to bring the curve down a little bit so that as we raise it up, the reverb comes in a little more gradually. So this motion source is really, really good for creating big transitions, builds, super good on a drum bus, an effects bus, or even your whole mix. So let's have a look now at the LFO as a motion source. So the LFO here is set to quarter note and to sine wave with a full range. And I'm going to use it to control some distortion. We'll have it control some drive level so that we get a nice pumping distortion. I'll switch it on to rectifier here because it's super crunchy. The LFO is also controlling the wet dry. And let's have it also control the speaker simulation. And we'll have it control the wet dry on the speaker to give, again, really nice pumping effect. A little bit more drive there, which again is LFO controlled. And we can even have it control some of the EQ on that speaker. The LFO is really inspiring because you can get drastically different results by adjusting your rates or even your LFO shape. So Transit 2 has an envelope follower. Envelope followers are commonly thought of as being a control for something like an auto wah or an auto filter or something of the like. But in this case, I'm going to use it to modulate a couple things on this synth loop I have coming from BA1. So let's use the follower to control the new reverser. We have it dropping the tempo to a 0.5 rate, and I'm using the envelope follower to control the wet dry here, which gives it this really cool kind of lo-fi element. Let's go and take it and have it control a high pass filter as well. We'll get the range down a little bit lower so it's a bit more audible, and we'll bring the resonance up. So now every time the envelope follower sweeps, it's controlling both the filter cutoff and the mix on this reverser here. We can also have it control the memory amount, which adds some nice kind of glitchy elements. And then we can modulate the entire thing by controlling the amount of detection, which sort of controls just how much time the signal spends at a certain part of the range that we define over here. And obviously you have an attack and release amount, which is very recognizable for somebody who's used to working with envelope followers. So it's a really cool way of having all of your effects respond in a way that's very dynamic and completely controlled by your audio input signal. Another really fun use for the envelope follower that's super creative and super useful is to use it to dynamically control the presence of effects in an effects chain. So in this case, I've got Transit 2 sitting on a drum loop. And you can see our detection level is showing here. So let's actually go and start adding some effects. So we're going to bring the bit crusher into the mix. And I'm going to reverse this so that, as you can see, every time a kick or a snare hits, we're pulling the bit crusher out of the mix. Let's add it so we've got some nice crunchy signal. Let's add in some delay. And again, I'm going to reverse that. So every time we have a kick or a snare hit, it's ducking that delay out of the mix. And let's go and add verb in as well. And we're going to reverse that. So that's kind of fun. But let's actually take a look down here and have the envelope follower dynamically control our mix. So what this is doing is actually running a wet dry on the entire plugin. So it's passing the unaffected signal through according to the detection level on the envelope follower. To complete this effect, to have these effects duck out of the way with the transient hit, we're just going to reverse this. And so now, as you can hear, we have the beat hit and then the effects rise in the absence of the beat. So Transit 2 now has a sidechain motion source, which allows you to take the volume output of one signal and use it to control the parameters on another. So in this case, Transit 2 is now sitting on an instance of BA1, but the sidechain input is being taken from the drum loop, and I can use it to control all sorts of different components here, including the wet-dry on this loop, the loop rate, which introduces some nice kind of glitchy elements, and then another instance of the filter 24 with the sidechain driving cutoff and resonance along with mix. The fun thing about the sidechain input is that it allows you to control all of these different parameters in a way that plays with the rhythm of another track. So in this case, the drum loop is driving all of these elements, and we can tweak out that detection knob to find sweet spots within the parameters that we're defining. Transit 2's gate mode allows you to control the parameters that you've set up according to a particular grid amount using things like a MIDI controller. So this is actually excellent for live performance. In this case, I have it set up to do a ping pong back and forth, the pendulum here, along with a loop, so that as I trigger the gate, it will turn on all of these effects and sweep the parameters according to the range I've defined. But of course, you can also turn both those off, which turns it more into a one-shot. Transit 2's sequencer element is, like the gate, clocked to your host tempo and then controlled according to a grid. So you have everything from 16th note all the way through to full bars. You can use it to fire off a single instance of your animated control, which is excellent for live performance or within the context of a track, or you can use it to really get inspired by a loop by using a shorter kind of trigger point, like a half bar here, which is going to loop, or even shorter to get some really cool pumping elements. You can stop it using this button here, and you can even set the pendulum mode on, which allows you to get some really, really inspiring effects using your chain. Remember, your motion sources do save with your presets, so if you find a preset that you like that has a particular control, like the macro knob, remember you can get inspired by switching it up for a different motion source, like the LFO. And if you happen to like the result, you can save it and create a new preset out of it. So thanks for checking out this video, and I hope that this gave you a really nice overview of the motion sources that are now available to you in Transit 2.